elders about it. All right, Genesis chapter 2. Reading from verse 18 until the end of the chapter. Genesis 2:18. Then the Lord God said, "It is not good that the man should be alone. I will make him a helper fit for him." Now out of the ground the Lord God had formed every beast of the field and every bird of the heavens, and brought them to the man to see what he would call them. And whatever the man called every living creature, that was its name. The man gave names to all livestock, and to the birds of the heavens, and to every beast of the field. But for Adam there was not found a helper fit for him. So the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon the man, and while he slept, took one of his ribs and closed up its place with flesh. And the rib that the Lord God had taken from the man, he made into a woman and brought her to the man. Then the man said, This at last is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. Therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. And the man and his wife were both naked and were not ashamed. As we look again to our origin story, to the creation of the male and the female in your image, and as we begin to examine what it means to live in community with other people and to live as husband and wife in our marriages, I pray that you would once again teach us from your word, help us to understand those things which come from the word of God, and that you would help us to live them out, regardless of what that may mean for the culture around us, what that might mean for a change in our own attitudes and behaviors. Lord, give us the courage to be able to adapt and to change our thinking to be in line with that of the Word of God. And so to that end, we ask that you mold us and shape us into the image of Jesus Christ. Amen. All through Genesis so far, we're not that far, but so far we've seen what is an astonishing creation of God. And last week we saw at the beginning of Genesis 2 how God has not only created this amazing, wonderful universe, this incredible world on which we call home, but he created a special provision for the first two human creations, a garden in the east named Eden. And that was the place where God was specifically going to set them to live, to work, and to enjoy everything that he had created, except they were not permitted to eat the fruit from a single tree. It's a beautiful picture, one that we can probably not even comprehend. An incredible cachet of animals would have surrounded Adam. 4 rivers flowed within that garden, and there was a spring of clear water that came up to provide the plants and the animals with necessary nourishment. There were a wide variety of fruit-bearing trees to provide Adam with fruit. And we read even of valuable materials that were there for him to work with and to build. But there was something not right about that situation. When we last left the text of Genesis, the man was alone. And as we read in this text, he won't be alone for very long. Verses 18 to 20 describe for us man's need for a companion. And before we get to that, I want us to fully understand how the text builds. How it builds to the climax of creation, specifically the creation of the woman in this chapter. We saw in chapter 1 how the text builds to the climax of the creation of the male and female in God's image, how it repeats certain phrases and then stops us up by changing things. And here, we need to understand sort of the artistry of the way our writer is putting forth Adam's situation. So let's notice, for example, all of the blessings that God has given to Adam out of his love and out of his goodness. Keep in mind, Adam is there, he's by himself. So when we look at verse 9 of chapter 2, we're told that God had made all kinds of trees, all kinds of bushes and plants that were pleasing to the eye and were good for food. And so this is a garden in which Adam is existing, that is there providing for every one of his bodily needs. But not only that, it was a beautiful place to live. It wasn't just functional, it was beautiful. And then in verse 15, we see that God gave this man significant labor to do. He must work the ground, and he must pull the fruit off, and he must cook and eat, right? He gave him responsibility when he was in the garden. He was to care for it as well as to work it for his own food. Adam wasn't designed to just lounge around in paradise and have everything just sort of pop up for him as he needed it. He wasn't simply to enjoy the beauty of the garden. Adam was to work. He was to do things. And to be sure, right, we need to understand his work is not hampered by thorns and thistles, right? That's going to come a little bit later on. But he is still called by God to do meaningful work that is going to result in meaningful fruit. And part of this meaningful work is obedience to God's command, which was, eat all the trees, don't eat that one. Then when we read in verse 19, Adam did not just have plants around him, he had an abundance of animal life as well. And it would have been a very unique situation. Animals had no fear of him, and he had no fear of them. And this garden essentially is a place of perfect harmony among the inhabitants of the earth. The earth functioned well. The inhabitants on the earth that lived on it functioned well with the earth and with each other. It was a place where everything was beautiful and was functioning perfectly. And we see throughout the creation days these sort of happy refrains, if I can sort of dumb it down that way. These happy refrains of God. God saw and it was good. My mic is cutting out, isn't it? There we go. All right, here we go. There we go. These 6 happy refrains. Every day, God saw it and it was good. God saw it and it was good. And then we saw in at the end of the 6th day in chapter 1, that after the creation of the male and the female, it was very good. And that leaves us very unprepared for the not good declaration that God makes in verse 18. The Lord God said it was not good. And again, as we read the text, we should be stopped up by this, because we've just read that after the 6th day, things were very good. But now Adam is by himself, and God says it's not good. And what's not good about it? Well, what's not good is that the man is existing in this beautiful place, this well-functioning place, this harmonious existence alone. And the phrasing is strong language. It's something that was missing. There was something missing even among the blessings and the beauty of the garden. Something was off. There was deficiency in creation for the man. Things couldn't function the way they should be functioning if he's by himself. Things were beautiful, but they couldn't be as beautiful as they would be if the man had a companion. And so when God is saying in verse 18, it's not good that the man should be alone, God is essentially saying, this is a bad situation. It is bad for Adam to be by himself. It is bad for Adam to lack an intimate companion. And then what we read after this is, when you think about it, it's weird. because we already know that male and female are in the image and likeness of God. We know already from chapter 1 that somewhere along the line, a woman is going to show up. We don't know how, we don't know when, but we know that a woman's going to show up. So what God does is that he brings before Adam all of the created livestock, birds, and beasts for him to name. So it's not good for Adam to be alone. Let's see if there's a companion among all of creation that can be found for Adam among all of the animals that God has created. And then when it's over, at the end of verse 20, we're told there was not found a helper fit for him. So there's no one in creation who is suitable for him. Adam was not created to be a hermit living by himself in a beautiful garden surrounded by a bunch of animals, even though they would have gotten on beautifully and harmoniously. And so when we say that a dog is a man's best friend, it's completely and utterly untrue. I think we all know that. But this emphasizes that it's not good for the man to be the only human surrounded only by plants and animals and inanimate creation. So again, let's remember that this declaration, this observation of the situation is God's observation. God didn't consult Adam, right? He didn't go up to Adam and say, Adam, you're here alone in the garden. Is there anything I can do for you? Is there anything you need? Is there anything more that I can actually get after for you? That's not how it worked. In fact, Adam may not have had any idea that it was not good for him to be alone. He may not have had any idea about that. And in fact, the exclamation of verse 23, it seems to indicate that Adam was, bad word that I'm going to use, kind of resigned to the fact that he was going to be there alone among all the animals. And that if this is what God wants for me, this is perfect, this is wonderful, I will make this work, this is awesome. And then he gets shown the woman and he's like, whoa, what is going on here? And so God is saying that this is not good for Adam, even if Adam may not have figured this out for himself. He had every abundant provision. He had a whole zoo of animals over which he had dominion, and yet God was looking at that situation and saying, it's not good. This isn't right. So why then does God parade these animals before Adam? If he's already intending to create Eve, we know that from chapter 1, he's going to bring a woman to the man. Why does he bring the animals first? Why does he even hint at the fact that a companion may be found amongst all of animal creation? And here again, we need to keep in mind the artistry of the story, the beauty in the way in which our author is developing and leading to the climactic revelation of this woman for Adam. And again, we're using our sanctified imagination a little bit if we can. And what we need to understand is that God was preparing Adam to receive the most precious gift that he would ever receive from God, and that is the woman, Eve. And so the very action of him having to name all the animals is almost like a divine sort of nudge to Adam, saying, hey, Adam, there's no one out there like you. Right? With every animal that's brought to him that he names, it's just a little elbow to Adam. Hey, Adam, that one's not for you. That one's not for you. Right? Adam, you need something that these animals can't provide. You need companionship. And think about it again. Think about it from Adam's perspective. Okay? So we're told that he needs a companion. We're told that the animals are brought to him for his naming so that he can see if maybe there's a companion out there. And so animal after animal shows up to him. His expectations would have been fairly high. There's a lot of animals. There's a lot of creation. And so God is, I don't know, sitting on a bench that he had made. I don't know where he's sitting. But these animals come by and he's pointing and he's going, this is what this is and this is what that is and whatever. And you would have thought expectantly that somewhere among this line of animals is a perfect companion for him. And as they go by, I don't know if they went small to big or big to small, or it was just a random mosh pit of animals. But whatever it was, the more animals come by, the less likely Adam would have felt that a companion was going to be found for him. And worse yet, again, we're using our sanctified imagination, it would have been both male animals and female animals that would have come to him. Think about that. So he would have seen all of these animals coming. And I know Noah, 2 by 2, blah, blah, blah. But we're told in Genesis 1 that all of these animals were given a specific creation mandate to be fruitful and multiply. I think we all understand how, animals are fruitful and multiply. So male and female would have come by him. And he would have thought to himself maybe, wait a minute. Everything in creation has a partner suitable. They're all coming here 2 by 2 with a partner perfectly suited for them. Where's mine? I can't be they have their partner. They can't be my helper suitable because they're suitable to each other. So where's mine? And so throughout this whole process, Adam would have seen that God had created for him in the garden beautiful creation, beautiful things that he should have dominion over. But his emphasis would have been in this process that there was only one way Adam was going to get a partner suitable for him. And that was by God creating it for him. The disappointment in the text is palatable, right? As you think about Adam sitting there naming all these animals, and none is found. What a devastating critique of this situation. This situation is not good. But you know what? It's actually worse than what you think it is. Because in all of creation, there's nothing there for Adam. Think about how disappointed Adam would have been. As the reader, we read this and go, no helper was found. Think about Adam sitting there, all the animals gone. Wouldn't he be thinking, is that it? Like, we're done here? Right? So we're trying to find a companion for me. All the animals are gone. And then he would have looked on through the path, into the field, whatever, and he would have seen nothing more. And what God is trying to communicate to Adam is that, you know what? This is going to happen for you only by divine initiative. And part of the reasoning behind it, I think we're going to see later, is that since God created Adam and God specifically created Eve, God declares his ownership over them, and because he owns them, he then creates a structure for them by which he says, you will be blessed, you will live fruitfully within the structure that I have made for you. So what does God do then? We know the story. God causes a deep sleep to come over Adam. And during that sleep, God creates the woman from him as his suitable helper. Think about the joy and the wonder that would have filled his heart when God introduced him for the first time to the one perfectly suited to be exactly what he needed. He has just gone through this extensive process of naming all the animals. He's just gone through, let's be honest, the massive disappointment of not finding his companion. And then he's tired, he falls asleep, and then God, when he wakes up, walks this woman to him. And now we know why, at the end of chapter 1, God looks at his creation and says it's very good. It's only after the creation of the woman completes the final day of creation that God can declare it to be very good. Now, herein lies our first sort of lesson, or our first understanding of who we are as a race of people from this creation narrative. We will talk about marriage, but I think there's something more fundamental about who we are as a human race that is important to understanding our origin story. And it's about companionship. If I can, that's the word I've chosen to use. I don't know if that's the best word. But God, having created everything perfectly, looks at a single human being living in the garden and says for him to be by himself is not good. He needs a companion. He needs a suitable helper. He needs to live in a social environment. So solitary fellowship with God, even in the perfection of the Garden of Eden, is not God's plan for humankind. Okay? Solitary fellowship with God has never been a part of his plan. It is not good for Adam to be alone in fellowship just with God. You would think that that would be awesome. But God looks at Adam and says, no, it's not good for Adam to just be in fellowship with me by himself. He needs someone else. So God's plan for humankind, going back to the very, very beginning, is to create us as social creatures who need other people in serious, real companionship. God senses that it's not good for a man to be alone, and so he sets out to provide a social environment in which Adam exists. And that is our first and broadest implication of creation. We are social creatures. And I think it's ironic, we all recognize this, I think it's ironic that in an age consumed with social media, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Snapchat, I don't know, has there something come out in the last 24 hours I'm unaware of? Right? They're sold as a way of bringing us together, right? It's social media. And yet, we all know that it's not social media. Find it interesting, just as a sort of anecdotal observation, how often you go to a restaurant, and as soon as you go to a restaurant, you look at another family or whatever. It's a family of four sitting there, and what are they doing? They're all on their phones. It's like, oh yeah, that's a social media. Absolutely, right? We live in an age of unprecedented technology, designed to make our lives easier, so we have more time to do what we want, more time to hang out with people, and yet the vast majority of people in our world feel more isolated and more alone than any other generation. It's a fact. It's a psychological fact confirmed by psychological and sociological studies, just by anybody and everybody. Think about it. Think about it this way. With a few clicks of a mouse or a few taps with your finger, you can read about things happening all over the world as they happen. You can track the hurricane that just came from Florida, second, not minute, second by second by second. I watched my daughter's airplane when she left Australia last Saturday on a very cool app, which I had to delete because it can be consuming. I could see her sitting at the terminal. I could watch her airplane being pushed back from the terminal, taxiing to the runway, and then taking off. Not second by second, but like millisecond by millisecond. If her plane moved, I could watch it. Not only that, I discovered, you can actually go and watch traffic cameras in pretty much any city and anywhere in the world. You can see what's going on right now in Singapore if you want to on traffic cameras. Right? You can have real-time updates of a traffic jam in Hong Kong if you really want them. Closer to home, I can carry on a conversation with our elders for an entire week and not see a single one of them. I don't know how many times I've texted my wife from the basement. Not even the basement. I'm sitting on the couch, she's in the next room, and we're texting. Like, we are literally 15 feet away, and I can't be bothered to speak. And yet, I think if we're honest with ourselves, the more we experience those kinds of things, the more we are left feeling so small and insignificant. Things that are designed to bring the world to us actually reminds us of how small we really are in relationship to our incredibly big world. And what that does is creates an incredible sense of isolation and loneliness. Among all the global activity that I can watch and be a part of, I can feel so incredibly alone. In fact, one of the places where you feel most alone is in a group, right? Psychology and sociology has demonstrated that. I feel most alone the bigger the group is. So all this stuff that's intended to make the world smaller and to bring us together actually pushes us further apart. It doesn't bring us together nearly as much as we think it does, and it actually contributes to our loneliness and isolation. In study after study after study, technology, in particular smartphones, have been shown to be the overwhelming contribution to loneliness, depression, and anxiety in all ages of people, all ages. Primarily teens and youth. The earlier they get smartphones, the more the increasing chances of them dealing with some level of mental health related to depression, anxiety, or suicidal thoughts. It's an absolute scientific fact. And the reason why is because technology forces upon us superficial relationships that are all a facade. It's the reality. Nobody is who they are online. You aren't. I'm not. I don't have Facebook and Twitter and all the rest. And this is one of the reasons. You want to talk? Let's talk. You want to know who I am? Let's hang out. None of us are the same person online that we are in person. Right? We've created a persona, an avatar, through which we lean into a world that doesn't actually exist. Right? We see people on Twitter tweeting and twittering and Xing away. We see people doing the latest dance on TikTok. Somebody told me that, oh my gosh, you dip your hands in paint and you hug your partner, right? That's the level of stupidity that we've come to as a society. People show the wonders of their life on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, and is that their true self? No, the pie you see displayed in Thanksgiving is probably the 6th one that they tried to make, and the other 5 couldn't make the Facebook cut. We create artificial personalities very, very quickly. And in doing so, let me use a 21st century word, we catfish people. We catfish people into thinking that our online selves are our real selves, when in actual fact, we are nothing like our online selves. We fool ourselves into thinking that we have all sorts of friends, all sorts of people that love us and care for us, because our Instagram page tells us that we have 500 followers. But if we're honest with ourselves, we actually have no intimate relationships with anybody at all. Because why would you have a relationship with a perfect person that you've created online? Why would anybody ask me how I'm really doing when all I ever project is that things are flippin' awesome? Right? And what do you do when somebody shares their true and intimate feelings on Facebook? Unfriend. Or Instagram, unfollow. I don't need that in my life. We don't need that kind of negativity. You see, these verses in chapter 2 remind us that a human person can never be as God intended them to be if they live in isolation, or if they live an unauthentic life, or if they try and project something that is not true of who they are. We cannot, as individuals, be complete in ourselves without the intimate companionship and fellowship of another human being. And I'm not just talking marriage. Marriage is the sort of the union that God creates for those things to be existing in a certain way. Be fruitful and multiply, procreation, etc. But that isn't the only kind of companionship that we need. We see this throughout the rest of Scripture. We need the fellowship of other people of our own sex and gender. Men need other men. Women need other women. That's the broad perspective. So yes, I am incomplete without my wife because God has blessed me with a wonderful woman to be a helper suitable. But I am also incomplete without the love and care of men in my life who can help me to be the husband, the father, the leader that I need to be. We cannot live without the fellowship of others. We cannot be truly human apart from each other. We need relationships with other people. We need that, frankly, to keep us human. The more we push other people away, the more we live in loneliness and isolation, the less human we are. Now, I'm not a psychologist, never claimed to be. Not a counselor, don't even want any of that kind of stuff. But I think I can almost guarantee that if feelings of loneliness and depression and anxiety are overwhelming you, put your phone down and go have a face-to-face with somebody you know. Put your phone down. Don't text them. Say, hey, can we meet? Can we go to Smitty's? Can we have some wings? Can we go for a coffee? Can we go for a bike ride? Can we go for a walk? Face-to-face. That's what God means when he's talking about companionship and fellowship. It's those kinds of relationships that encourage us and challenge us to be human, the way God intended us to be human. And the fundamental part of our human relationships like that are designed to put us in proper relationship with God. So not only do we have companionship because it makes us more human, but we have companionship because it makes us more attuned to what God wants of us. We use the word discipleship or something like that, but it's massively important. We need others to direct us away from the sin that so easily entangles and towards the beauty of the gospel and the victory over sin that Jesus provides. To remind us continuously that our hearts will continue to be restless until they find rest in God. Upon this first lesson of companionship is built a specific demonstration of that companionship, which is biblical marriage. In verse 18 and then in 21 to 23, God is going to create a helper fit for Adam. Or if you have a different translation, the word helper fit might be a suitable helper. I think that might be more of an NIV thing. So as we read in these verses, we realize that God is taking it upon himself to provide Adam a helper fit for him. Notice again a number of things about this particular passage. We recognize that we've already read, man is first formed from the ground. So he is from the dust. Eve is then formed from him. Now at this point, we're not 100% sure about the significance of this order of creation, but we are going to find out that this way in which God created the man first and the woman from the man is going to be incredibly important for the nature of the marriage relationship. We're going to have to wait until we get to 1 Corinthians 11. We're going to have to wait until we get to Ephesians 5 to have that fully fleshed out in marriage. And we're going to have to wait until 1 Timothy 2 for that to be fully fleshed out in the relationships of male and female regarding leadership in the church. But for now, we recognize that God's deliberate creation is man first from the ground, woman first from Eve, or from him. We recognize again that Adam was put into a deep sleep so that the woman can be created from him, verse 23. And so in this way, we realize that Adam can never take any credit for creation. God didn't have a little brainstorming thing saying, Adam, hey, I'm going to create someone for you. You know, like, what would you like? Well, give me your top 5 things that you would like in a companion. You know, it's sort of the first sort of dating app of all time. No, God puts Adam to sleep and creates what he thinks perfectly, obviously, what will be the perfect companion for him. He's asleep, so he can never take credit for anything. And then God brings woman into being and presents the woman to him. This is entirely a sovereign creation to perfectly match the man. Again, we read that Adam names this beautiful new creation. His suitable helper will be called woman, showing again part of that ordering of creation. We're not suggesting, please don't think that I am, that she's just another one of the animals that God brings by Adam to name. That's not the point. Actually, what is more the point is what Adam names her. Right? Adam names her in the original Isha. He is Ish, she is Isha, which demonstrates compatibility, mutuality. He is like her, but they are not exactly alike. He is Ish, she is Isha. The woman's creation out of Adam, then, is the basis for their equality. She's not inferior to him. He's not superior to her. He's not greater to her in any way. They are equal, equally created by God by a special act designed to come together in companionship. He is Ish, she is Isha. To love her is to love himself. And so God intends for the man and the woman to come together to be a spiritual unity of human souls, to be a functional unity in order to keep the commandments of God, in order to work the ground and to eat from it, and in order to be fruitful and multiply. And he intended for them to enjoy intimate, undivided togetherness. Body, soul, spirit, whatever you want to say. The whole thing was designed to be intimate and undivided togetherness. But, as I already mentioned, there is structure to their relationship, ordained by God. And one of the ways in which we see it, obviously we've just mentioned, Adam was created first, but Adam was also alone given the covenant of works. Right? That covenant, do not eat of this tree, was given only to Adam prior to the creation of Eve, with the obvious intention that he would let her know, oh, by the way, Eve, tour the garden, right? I named this, that, I named this, that, I named this, that. That's the tree of life. We can eat all that. Those bushes, they're great, but they give me indigestion. That tree, we don't eat that. We don't do that. That's not for us. And so in that sense, we then get to passages like Romans 5, where the problem of the breaking of the covenant of works is essentially Adam's. He was given the covenant. He is the one who's going to have to guide his family to keep the covenant. And when the breaking of the covenant comes, he is the one that's going to be called onto the carpet. And we'll see that in a couple of weeks in Genesis chapter 3. Now, this word helper gets a lot of heat, right? Gets a lot of heat, and so we need to define it. We need to understand it, right? So first of all, we need to make sure that we understand that it doesn't just mean something like unpaid intern, right? Or junior assistant, right? Or this sort of idea that the man sits at his big desk and he just, coffee, and then in walks the assistant. That's not how it works. We read this word as actually being descriptive of God more than of the woman in the Old Testament. God is often described throughout the Old Testament, from Exodus all the way through Psalms and all the way beyond that, as the helper of Israel. He's the helper of Israel. He comes and does for Israel what Israel cannot do for themselves, which is a bit of the picture here. So man's helper is no weak, subjugated woman, right? This isn't an oppressive relationship, a subjugated relationship where the man rules and the woman just yes, yes, yes all the time. Notice that she's a helper fit. That word is as important as the word helper is, because it describes to you the nature of their relationship. A suitable helper, a helper fit, because it captures both her role and her dignity. The function of the helper would be complementary, not compliment, like, hey, I like your shirt today, but complement, as in they come together to complement each other's gifts and physical attributes, etc., etc., etc. Right? A helper fit for him is actually literally more like this. And again, I'm not a Hebrew scholar, so I have to hack my way through this, but it's more an issue of a helper like but opposite him. So they're the same but different, right? So the emphasis is actually, I don't want to say more, but you start with equality and then you end with helper suitable. You don't start with helper suitable and then work back to equality. It's equality and then that. So the woman is a corresponding counterpart. She would share in his nature. Remember, chapter 1, 26 and 7, male and female, they're created in the image of God. And as his matching opposite, she would supply what is lacking in him. That's often not sort of discussed with regards to this perspective. Usually people get bent out of shape about a helper suitable, not realizing that if the man was actually as big and tough and strong as he thinks, he wouldn't need a helper. But he does. He can't do it on his own. Without her, he's not good. So he needs her to come in. The man was created in such a way to need the woman. What he lacked, she supplied. And vice versa. I think the implication of the text is very strong. What she lacked, he supplied. And so again, there's a couple of ways in which this passage demonstrates the woman's suitability for Adam. The first, obviously, is the broad sense. It focuses on companionship. It focuses on the basic need of the human person to be in relationship with another human person. Derek Kidner, in his commentary on Genesis, writes, as a social being made for fellowship, Adam will not live until he loves. Adam will not live until he gives himself away to another person on his own level. Right? That's where it starts. Now, in a more narrow sense, Eve is a helper fit for Adam because she is made to help him in his vocation, right? He must work and tend the garden, and she will help him to do that. She will help him share in his enjoyment of God. That's a huge part of it. On his own, that relationship between him and God was not good. But now that he has a relationship with God together with her, now we're very good. And she is going to help him supposed to help him, respect and obey the covenant that God has given to them. Together, they were to be able to be stronger in their obedience to the covenant of God. And so the conclusion then is that now that the woman has been created, brought to the man, creation has now reached its very good goal. Male and female in the garden, naked and not ashamed. That's where we are. That's what we've got. This very good situation in the garden with these two individuals. But God is not just bringing them together for companionship. There's something within the creation ordinance that can't be filled if God creates a good buddy in another man for Adam. And that is, be fruitful and multiply. There's the dominion thing that they need to do together. There's the covenant keeping thing they need to do together. But there's also a be fruitful and multiply part to the covenant that God has made with Adam and Eve. And to ensure that that happens, we have the first marriage in all of Scripture taking place in verses 24 and 25. Well, it actually happens at the end of verse 22, 24 and 25. Just for the record, you ever wonder why it's tradition for a father to walk his daughter down the aisle? It's right here at the end of verse 22. Because God walked Eve to Adam in the very first marriage. So that's what we see here. The very first one flesh union coming together. And this is the foundation upon which is based all teaching on the covenant of marriage. All teaching in Scripture is based upon these verses. Later on, in verse 24, we're going to get a commentary on this story. Verse 24 is our narrator coming in for the first time in Genesis, and he's going to give us an observation. This doesn't have anything to do with the text. It's Moses, the author of the text, coming in and saying, "Therefore, a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh." What Moses is saying to Israel, do you know why we have marriage? Do you know why one man, one woman, that's it? That's because of this, because that's what God did at the very beginning of time. The man and the woman are not designed to merely be friends. They're brought together by God in a marriage relationship. And God walks as the father of the bride, Eve to Adam, and then inaugurates this first wedding ceremony. What's part of this wedding ceremony? Well, there's leaving and there's cleaving, if I can use sort of traditional language. And within these leaving and cleavings, we see what a healthy marriage actually is like. And I'm not going to sort of, kind of divert into my sort of premarital stuff. But leaving and cleaving are central to a marriage. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and his mother. Now, this must be understood as a prescription for the loyalty and intimacy that a man must give his wife and a wife must give his man. He must leave his family. She must leave her family. The union with the man's wife is so profound that he leaves his family. Are you getting this? He leaves his family to go and marry her and set up their own family. In other words, his first obligation is not to his last name, but to his new bride. So if he's going to tell anyone to go hang in a tree, it's his parents, not his wife. And I'll tell you this right now. No judgment yet. Well, no. So many marriages fall apart right here. Because the husband does not leave his mother and father. He brings them into his marriage. So many women do not leave their father and mother. They bring their parents into their marriage. My advice, if you get married, move away. If you can, move away. Go to Alberta. Don't go to Saskatchewan, God-forsaken place. Go to Alberta, because that's where God lives. Go to Alberta. Go away for a year. That would be my advice. I mean, I know that it's impossible. And husbands, this one is on you. Establish your home independent of your parents. Parents, don't force your children to decide. Stay out. And that may mean you don't give them money. That may mean you don't give them extra time. That may mean you don't give them extra help. That may mean you let them suffer. But you let the man leave and cleave and establish his own house, even if it is a colossal gong show. Be there for them, but do not meddle. And husbands, stand up to your in-laws. Stand up to your parents. Make it clear before you get involved. This is my house. This is my wife. We will do this together. Loyalty is simple. Husband to wife, wife to husband, the parents gone. Cleaving is holding fast. The picture is again, to translate literally, it speaks of stickiness. Okay? It speaks of, we would say the word glue. The idea is that I live in a relationship with my parents, but we're not stuck together. Okay? The idea is that my parents raise me, and then they out the house when you find the right woman. And when you find the right, because you're not stuck to me. We're not stuck together. We are not stuck, but I'm stuck here. So instead of paint, it's actually glue. So I am only stuck to one person in this world, and that's my wife. I'm not stuck to my parents. Love them. They're here, I have to say that. Okay? I love my in-laws some days. But I am stuck only to my wife. She is my queen. She is the one who will walk through life with me, and everybody else can go hang it in a tree except for her. That's how marriage works. And so many marriages break up when that doesn't work. Any man or woman who believes that his first loyalties or second loyalties or third loyalties belong to his parents believes a perversion of marriage, and that marriage is doomed to failure. Leave and cleave. The other thing we realize is that marriage is a covenant. This leaving and cleaving is designed by God in a covenantal relationship. Notice that there is a ceremony and a public declaration, right? I think that's how verse 24 functions. God brings the woman to the man. The two of them come together in the sight of God, and they are married. And they are now stuck together, leaving and cleaving to themselves. And Moses, with his comment in verse 24, says, that's the ideal for every single marriage. If I can say it like this, the ideal for your marriage is to be Adam and Eve in the garden with no one else there. You want to know how to leave and cleave? You live in a garden by yourselves. That's how you leave and cleave. That's the goal. And so one of the reasons why we do weddings in public is because this covenant is a public covenant. It is a declaration of a leaving and cleaving. That's essentially what biblical marriage is. It's I am choosing to move out and move in, and we do that together with the couple as a church, as family, and as friends. And as I mentioned, this idea of biblical marriage is the foundation for everything within the rest of Scripture. Jesus, for example, in Matthew chapter 19, when he was talking about marriage and talking about the relationship and divorce, he said this. He answered, "Have you not read that he who created them from the beginning made them male and female and said, 'Therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh'? So they are no longer two but one. What therefore God has joined together, let man not separate." Likewise, Paul made it foundational to marriage. We just heard it when Dylan read Ephesians 5. Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother. Are you getting a theme? "And he holds fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh." Why? This mystery is profound, and I am saying that it refers to Christ in the church. Now we know why leaving and cleaving is so important. Do you think Christ has somebody else on the side? No. He's got the church. That's his bride, and only his bride. He died for, sanctifies, saves, and works for the betterment only of his wife, who is the church. And so when we leave and cleave, we are reflecting the gospel in that reality. So this one fleshness is an illustration of the union between Christ and his people. Now we're going to have to wait till, according to my schedule, June, maybe early July, before we get to Ephesians 5. But this is why a marriage that rises to the creational intention is so important. Right? This is why it is. Because a marriage that rises to the leaving and cleaving level of the first couple reflects the relationship that God has with his people and the relationship that his people have with God. It's a human window into how Christ and his bride relate to each other. And the more, I'll say it this way, the better our marriages are, the more clearly the gospel of God is seen. It makes the quality of your marriage so important. Now I know, husbands, I know it's hard. I know it's hard to stand up to your in-laws. I know it's hard to stand up to your parents. But when you see it as of gospel importance, of importance to your faith to do so, the challenge is, who's more important, my parents or my God? Who's more important, my wife, who God says I have to stick to, or my parents, who God has said I got to leave? Right? That's what Ephesians 5 does for us. So, a few more implications of this marriage relationship. The first one, and some of these I think are fairly simple, and we've already talked about some of them, but the first one in our day and age, we need to state this clearly, is it establishes binary sex and the direct relationship of gender to biological sex. In other words, there's only two genders, there's only two sexes. Right? We're men because we're male, and you are female, you are a woman, you are feminine because you are a female. It is God who defines us. He made us for himself to be in his image and to reflect his glory. He created and called us as male and female, as man and woman. And the male and female made in God's image in chapter 1 are the man and the woman who are married in chapter 2. There are no other sexes and thus no other genders in the very good garden in which God places humanity. Now again, I'll put a plug for this. A couple years ago, we did a seminar on God, the gospel, and gender. It's available on our YouTube channel. If you want a bit more of an expansion of kind of where we are and how to answer these critical race theory, critical gender theory type stuff, you can look at that. So, humanity is male man and female woman, clearly seen in Genesis 1 and 2. Second thing we see, any physical or emotional relationship different than what is taught in Genesis 1 and 2 between a man and a woman is sin. So we redefine our physically or emotionally intimate relationships to our own peril. Sex before or outside of heterosexual marriage is to our own destruction. We redefine marriage to our own destruction, saying that it's possible for same-sex marriage to be defended biblically, which it absolutely is not. Or what we say is, well, we really love each other, so it's okay if we have sex. We're getting married, so it's okay for a sexual relationship. Well, we really love each other, and we're having a sexual relationship, so we're married in the eyes of God. Biblically indefensible, and we do so to our own destruction. Fundamentally, whatever our government or our culture may decide about marriage, it remains God's creation and functions properly only as we live within the parameters within which God created us to live. So any view of marriage that is less than a covenant bond between one man and one woman made publicly before God, where they declare their intention to forsake all others and to stick to each other alone till death do them part, is less than God's intention for male and female. If you're young and you're single and you love God, you will wait. You will wait. Hebrews 13, let marriage be held in high honor among all, and let the marriage bed be undefiled. Third thing, directly coming from that, sexual satisfaction is to be found only in a heterosexual marriage relationship. See, what we have here in the first two chapters is God defining for us so many things about our origin story that we've already seen. And here we see God defining what it means to be truly human, to live in companionship in a social environment. We hear God defining for us what love looks like. You leave, sacrifice, you cleave to your wife. That's the fundamental nature of love. And he's defining for us what sex is. Naked and ashamed. That's where Adam and Eve find themselves. In a beautiful, wonderful relationship, chasing each other buck naked around all the bushes in the garden. And God looked at that and said, that is awesome. It's very good. That's what I want. I want Adam and Eve to do that. I want them to be in love. I want them to be best friends. I want them to have as much sex as they possibly can, because that glorifies me. Have you ever thought about that? That's why any deviation from the sexual norm of heterosexual marriage is so horrific, because God is glorified by one and he is horrified by the other. See, in sin, we have reduced all of these things, what it means to be human, what sex means, what love means, to far, far lesser than the divine design. We've created corrupted versions of what God has created to be beautiful and wonderful. Men and women have become users and consumers of sex, manipulators of love, rather than participants in a holy union with God as the center, to be enjoyed coram Deo, before the face of God. Love without God has been reduced to an inner feeling. And when it's reduced to that, it ebbs and it flows. And it can be abandoned whenever we don't feel in love. Whenever we don't think it's good for us, we can just let it go. And sex without God has been reduced to something that we only do with our bodies. That we can just give away whenever I need some sort of satisfaction or physical release. And I can do it to whomever I want, whenever I want. And the outcome, as we see around us, is a culture devoid of goodness. But worse, what do we see? We see people crushed under the weight of their self-made deviance. The last thing we see, we'll end on a positive note, is the relationship between the man and the woman is complementary. Complementary. Right? The word helper leads us in that direction. The order of creation leads us in that direction. The nature of the relationship between Adam and Eve suggests strongly, and I hate to use this word, but it's the best one, so I can't think of another one, maybe it's not the best one, is that there is an ordering or a hierarchy. That's a terrible word. Let's stick with ordering. In this relationship, established by God before the fall to guide the companionship between the man and the woman. Now again, here's a plug, but in a few months, where's Emily? When is the complementarianism, when do we have that scheduled to come out, the podcast? In a few weeks. Thank you. In a few weeks. So go and listen to all the podcasts, and you'll just bump into that one eventually, where I'll describe that in a little bit more detail. But right now, what we learn of the relationship regarding marriage here and elsewhere in Scripture is that there's tremendous mutual dependence between the man and the woman. The man is the head of the relationship, but without the woman, there is no relationship to be the head of. You can't rule something, you can't be an authority over something, you can't be the head of something if there's no something. So a man can never see himself as the authority, the ruler. He can never rule a marriage or lead a marriage in despotic terms, right? In this regard, I've been debating this quote because it does make me feel a touch nauseous when I read it. But Matthew Henry, every once in a while, offers you some beautiful poetic insight. He's a little bit too allegorical for my taking, or for my liking, but this one I think is nice. It's romantic, it's sappy, but it captures well, I think, the nature of God's creation of woman from the rib of Adam to be his helper. He writes this: "The woman is not made out of man's head to top him, not out of his feet to be trampled upon by him, but out of his side to be equal with him, under his arm to be protected, and near to his heart to be beloved." Oh, Matthew Henry. As cheesy as that is, it's pretty good. It captures the relationship that a man is supposed to have with his wife. She's equal to him, but she is protected by him. She is equal to him, but she is the most important person in the world to him. And as I said, we'll need to wait until we get into Ephesians 5, or the podcasts that are going to come. But for now, we note that this biblical complementarianism, the man as the head, the woman as the helper, is built into the very fabric of creation. It's the way God intended for a husband and a wife to exist. God created male and female as complementary expressions of the image of God. Male and female are counterparts, like but opposite each other, which are designed to together reflect God's glory. And yes, both sexes, the male and the female individually, bear the image of God, but together they do so in a very unique and distinct way. So here's what we don't want to think. We don't want to think of this kind of headship complementary relationship as sort of a 1950s kind of traditionalism, right? Or we don't want to think about it as this sort of dictatorship where the man stands over top of a subjugated, lowly woman. How can it be if the relationship is designed to reflect the truth about the relationship between the Father and the Son and the Spirit and the church? And that's where I want us to end. With the recognition that being male and female is not ultimately about me. It's not ultimately about us. It's about testifying by my relationships to the story of Jesus, to the salvation that is mine in Jesus Christ. We do not get to dictate what manhood and womanhood are all about. We don't get to dictate what a marriage is supposed to look like. God does that. God has done that. And what we need to realize is that we find our place in the world. We find our meaning in life. We find our highest value when we submit to God's designs for our existence, for God's designs for our relationships. And maybe you're the parent of a married child, and you need to go to that child and say, you know what, I have not let you leave and cleave the way I should. So whether you've decided to leave and cleave or not, I'm deciding to force you to leave and cleave. Or maybe you as a husband need to have a conversation at some point with your parents or with her parents and say, you know what? This is how it's going to be. Because when God's designs inform your life, when God's designs inform your relationship, when God becomes your highest good, you know what you're going to find? It's right there in the text. You will find the very good that God declared. And that should be our highest goal. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for the intimate narration of the first marriage that you brought to Adam in the garden. We thank you for the reminders that we need other people, that we are designed for companionship and friendship, that we're designed to go through life together with other people. Lord, give us the discipline, the courage to be able to put away those things which create these avatars instead of true selves. Lord, help us to put away these things that push people away from us, push intimate relationships away from us, so that we can actually be who you've created us to be in discipleship with other people. Lord, I pray for the marriages in this church, that we would hold this creation mandate as our highest good, as our ultimate goal. Lord, I pray that we would read these short little verses that happen here at the end of chapter 2, and that our desire for our marriage at all point would be to reflect what we read there. Lord, give husbands the courage to lead their families. Give husbands the courage to be able to leave their father and their mother and to cleave only to their wives. And Lord, as we do so, I pray that people would continue to see the gospel within our relationships in this church, and that your kingdom would be grown and that you would be glorified. Amen.